Hello, I'm delighted you were able to join us on this third episode, where I'm joined by Richard Napthine. Richard has been involved in some amazing programmes over the years, the 2012 Olympics, the development of Terminal 5 at Heathrow, and the digital transformation of Waitrose just being a few of them. He has some interesting perspectives on how to deal with programmes where the delivery date is not negotiable. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Richard. Well, first of all, thank you for agreeing to take part today, Richard. We're recording this the morning after the coldest night of the winter so far. So where do we find you today?
I'm in Hampton, although no, it wasn't too cold last night. We didn't have a frost here, so but a lovely day. Lovely day.
I was talking to a colleague up in the borders of Scotland earlier on, and he was saying he had 2 or 3 inches of snow in his garden. Not too sure whether that's coming down south. So, you've delivered transformation change across multiple sectors, including retail, travel, automotive, and utilities. So, how did you get into running transformation programs in the first place?
I'd run some big projects in aerospace for a while, but I suppose it really all started when I joined what was then BAA, the British Airports Authority, who then, before they were broken up, owned the 7 UK airports, including Heathrow, Gatwick, Stansted. I led a program putting in new core airport systems and processes into the UK airports, and I think it really the penny dropped for me then around all of the other things in terms of people and processes and the operations that you really needed to get right in order to move a business and an operation forward. The systems themselves were a bit scary, really. They were the core systems to the airport, so including the core operational airport database, where all of the information is stored to run an entire airport.
Right.
Aside from the complexity of getting these systems in, a massive learning point for me was after we'd put in all of the new systems and processes into Stansted Airport, and there was an operational event. What happened was all of the people that were then supposed to be using, these are airport airlines and handling agents, as well as the airport themselves, the cleaning companies, all of the people that need this information to know where the aircraft are and where they're going to arrive, where they'll be parked. Because of this operational event, everybody reacted and went back to their old way of doing things, which was trying to find out the information for themselves. I realised then there was so much more to putting in these kinds of, it's not just about the tech, it's not just about the systems. Actually, it's about the behaviours, it's about the culture, it's about how ultimately people work together to operate an airport or whatever else in a business.
The technology is the enabler, isn't it? It's actually, you need the people to do things differently or to take advantage of the technology.
That's right, and in this case, it was a single common set of information and data that everybody shared to allow the whole airport to operate. And so we went back in and did a lot more. Even more, we've done training and to get everybody ready, but it was then I realised that we need to do a lot more on the behaviour and the culture and what happens in particular situations and scenarios. A short while later, another operational event, actually, which some people might remember happened, which was there was it wasn't exactly a hijacking, but the Stansted hijacking. It was when basically a plane was taken over by the passengers. I think it was a peaceful hijacking, but nevertheless, it was people wanting to get to this country. But obviously, this aircraft comes into Stansted, is quarantined, but of course, the whole airport then goes into shutdown.
Yes.
Then watching this unfold we started to see people operating the airport behaving in the right way in terms of sharing information. So if they had a new piece of information, they put it into the system so that everyone else then knew that that was happening. And what it meant was that when the operation, the whole scenario sort of came to a frankly okay conclusion, the airport was operational again. It actually got back into a pretty good operational state incredibly quickly,
right?
Because of the behaviour and what happened with the people behind the scenes, whilst that event had gone on.
So I was going to say that almost proved that the sort of the structure and the way that the technology had been sort of established and set up was fit for purpose and was working effectively.
Yeah, but it's what it was the fact that all the parties across the airport increased their levels of collaboration using this data, using the systems and the technology, enabled the airport to get back on its feet that much more quickly, which was the whole point. And I think it was that really started to get me really interested in that side of it, in the business operations side, the behavioural side, the people side, the collaboration. Because as you say, technology and information is the enabler. It's then up to us, is how us human beings then work with it and work with each other that really makes the difference.
And after BAA, you moved on to the Olympics. 2012 Olympics team, so that must have been quite enjoyable.
Yeah, it was fantastic to be part of it. I was there to help set up the technology team, so to recruit all of the key leaders that would actually then go on to create the technology for the games and operate it. And I also led the major deals with the big providers, the big suppliers into London 2012, including the deal with BT, which was a fascinating organisation. I worked in the organising committee, LOCOG, run by Seb Coe, which was an organisation that only existed for 5 years.
Yeah.
Put on the greatest show on earth and then disappeared.
Well, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because every program, every major project has deadlines and budgets and stuff like that. But there's probably never a program that's got a definitive deadline that's publicised so far in advance that everybody knew that the games were going to launch and the launch event was at a certain time on a certain date, and that was known well in advance. So you had no flexibility to move that. There was no option to delay. You had that deadline that you had to meet, which presumably focused the mind somewhat.
Well, that was one of the reasons I think why they asked me to come and join them in terms of setting the thing up. Because previous to London 2012, I was very fortunate as well to work on Terminal 5, the construction of Terminal 5 at Heathrow. And ironically, Terminal 5 actually looked to the Olympics in terms of learning things. And one of the big things with Terminal 5 was again the fact that opening date was a target that was going to be hit, and what that did in terms of doing things differently on the construction program, in terms of flexibility, adaptability, constant sort of reprioritization. Only fixing things when they needed to be fixed, but constantly achieving the milestones, having a very, very clear plan. The top level plan for Terminal 5 just had 80 milestones for a £4.5 billion development. One milestone would be, six station railway completed, yes. And things like that. But underpinning that, then plans were clear and shared, but there was a lot of, the whole thing had to be flexible in terms of we might have to adjust scope or think of different ways of doing things or different ways of cost was a constant challenge, and either that needed to be addressed by doing things differently and more efficiently, finding out new ways to build things or deliver things.
And did you have a formal approach for doing that? Was, you know, because that almost sounds a little bit like that's the innovation type of approach of sort of fail fast sort of methodology, where, you know, you're trying stuff, you're making sure, but you're not tying yourself into it for a long period of time. There was a term I'll never forget we used on Terminal 5 called progressive fixity. I've never heard it used anywhere else, but it was actually an understanding of when was your last responsible moment for nailing something. Up until that point, you wanted to try and keep it flexible because other things could change and you might have to adapt. Right. Or it gave you the chance to see whether something could be done in a different way. Sometimes you'd actually look at doing something faster, but then you'd have to understand the implications of that on the how that was networked into the whole of the rest of the program, and whether that was an advantage or not. And then the other big thing on Terminal 5, I brought away from it was the combination of opportunity management with risk management. So as well as understanding what would make you later or put your costs up or affect quality or affect safety or ultimately affect the negatively the passenger experience, there was as much a focus on opportunity, on whether something could be done faster, cheaper, better, more safely, or enhance what passengers are going to do. And what we tried to do was trade off risk and opportunity. And the other big thing on Terminal 5 were the supply arrangements. So Terminal 5 was open book. There were agreed margins. It was highly collaborative, and it was those things that allowed the program itself to adapt. Over those many years, delivering the thing, the project, the product, whatever it is one thing. But change and transformation and things so often go wrong at that go live, and it's why you're planning for the transition from your new state, your old state, into your new state has got to be so meticulous. Absolutely. And you've got to cover the angles and really understand. And then again, a lot of it comes down to people and training and behaviour. Yeah. And that sort of opportunity balance between opportunity and risk. How have you deployed that in since doing it within in T5 in terms of the other programs that you've been involved in? Is that a core principle that you've adopted?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, applied everywhere. Encourage my program managers to run those on their elements, and then also make sure it's done at a portfolio level. So often, as we know, risk management is not done that well. Do a great big Excel spreadsheet and then throw it in a drawer. And I think it's about how I expect risk and opportunities to be discussed as part of doing day-to-day business, and the day-to-day delivery. Yes. And to be looked at by the combined teams, it's not just a project manager's role. It's the whole team needs to get involved in, what could come along and hit us and screw us up. Where are the upsides? What could we do? What could make things better? How could we go faster? Right. And make those conversations part of every hour, every day amongst the team.
Absolutely. Transformations, the catalyst for transformations are varied. People might be looking at new technologies. They might be looking at shifts in the marketplace, low profit margins, or looking for growth. Also, mergers and acquisitions are obviously a key element as well. You've worked across multiple different types of transformations. Which have you found the most interesting?
Of all the transformations, from a big grand design point of view, obviously Terminal 5 I was so glad to be part of that, in terms of building something so game changing for Heathrow.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of the more usual transformations I've been involved in, it was my work at Waitrose. I really enjoyed doing. I think I'm incredibly proud of, and I had just an absolutely fantastic team. And yeah,
can you go a little bit more into a little bit more detail about what you did there then, and why why it was so enjoyable?
I was asked to join to set up and run the customer transformation program. What that was about was Waitrose knew that it needed to change and give their customers, what customers were expecting in terms of grocery retail. The revolution that continues to happen digitally because of us and our connected world and our personal devices and how we now operate as people and what we expect. I guess the strap line really for the program was, how do we keep the best of what's Waitrose, but reflect the way that our customers want to shop today. And so this included everything from apps and websites and the whole sort of pure digital world, but also into what transformations do we need to make in store, in the various branches, in terms of the capabilities of partners, of the Waitrose partners, the Waitrose staff, and how that also then extended into the propositions and the services and what Waitrose needed to offer. Obviously in a very challenging market. It no longer is Waitrose just competing with the big supermarkets and the discounters like Lidl and Aldi. It's also having to compete with others who want a share of our stomachs as consumers. Our choice is now for, I want some dinner for tonight, with the likes of Just Eat or HelloFresh or Gusto or Deliveroo. It is now huge, and so Waitrose needed to reinvent itself and work out what it needed to provide its customers. And so this program was obviously very, very big, setting up from scratch. I had the opportunity to build a fantastic team, many of whom I'm still in contact with. And I think with Waitrose, and I think what I look for in what makes a transformation, a program enjoyable for me is one, is there the ambition there amongst the leadership of the organisation, in terms of, right, we really need to go somewhere new here, we need to go somewhere different. Secondly, does that then reflect in the attitude across the whole organisation, in terms of the desire to do things differently and to do things better. And then from a culture and a capability point of view, is the culture there that will really enable that transformation to happen at speed, at pace, and is sufficient capability there, particularly in terms of the teams and the people. Waitrose, all of those were present. There was a real ambition amongst the board at Waitrose to do something new and do something different. They selected, I didn't have previous retail experience, but they brought me in because of my skills in gluing all of this stuff together and delivering it at pace, and being able to build teams that would adapt and adjust depending on what we needed to do. They were really open to new ways of doing things. And I think, the culture of the partnership at John Lewis and Waitrose means the levels of collaboration across the whole organisation can be really, really high. And I think that I got a kick out as at least as much out of that as what that then enabled us to deliver in terms of in terms of new websites, groundbreaking apps, Waitrose leapfrogging their competitors in terms of the services you got in branch, and because of everything we did on payment, Waitrose were a launch partner for Apple Pay. Right. The morning that Apple Pay went live, it was live across all 350 plus Waitrose branches in the UK. And that program really sort of set that foundation in bringing Waitrose, up to being quite a leader in multi-channel, omni-channel grocery.
Right. And what would you say were the sort of vital steps? Are the sort of 6 or 7 things that you think, actually, I need to get these in place, working effectively, efficiently for them for it to be successful?
Yeah, I think I'll keep coming back to the whole thing about the people and the capability and the teams. In terms of things like methods and techniques, I've always found one size never fits all, and it depends on the organisation. I mean, I think what's important in any transformation, that you do have a consistent set of doing things. I won't say one set of doing things. Mm-hmm. For example, at Waitrose, we obviously had some projects that were employed much more sort of, say, pure agile techniques. Other projects that were quite legacy were a bit more chunky. But I guess the point is that you need to understand the toolbox you're going to use, and that everybody understands what that is, so that they are speaking a common language, and you get that you get the consistency in, and you make sure you get maximum possible alignment.
Yeah.
Where big transformation programs often go wrong internally is through a lack of alignment, because one team is charging off doing its own thing, and managing those cross dependencies is critical, as well as I've mentioned risk and opportunity management. But I think the understand when you're running a program that might have, I don't know, 20 or 30 active initiatives at any one time. It's one, making sure that everyone is clear on your destinations, be them interim or ultimate, whilst you want to give the teams themselves maximum autonomy to be able to adapt and do what they think is the right and most important things. It's really critical that the teams between the teams are joined up. And again, this isn't just about having some dependency register Excel spreadsheet. It's that actually you have those human connections, and you build a network of teams and a network of people. I talked earlier about capability being critical, and I think that's understanding right up front the skills, experience, capability you need, and if you haven't got them, you go out and get them damn quick. You see what untapped talent there might be in your own organisation, and how you build those proper multidisciplined and diverse teams. I've always found that, contrary to popular belief, pound notes and money are never the restricting factor on a transformation. It's always the capability of people, either that you haven't got the right sort of skills and experience, or so often people devoting the right amount of time. From senior leaders doing transformation as a bit of a hobby, as opposed to being truly committed and investing the necessary time and energy in it. And then similarly, you'll have sort of your people single points of failure, where there'll be certain people that have such critical skills, they're pulled in all directions, and it's those things that slow down decision making, slow down progress, and ultimately slow down your transformations more than having sufficient pound notes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've worked across different sectors. Have you found those any differences within the various organisations that you've worked in different sectors?
You mean differences in the organisations, or differences in how you carry it out?
Well, differences in approach. There's always an argument that actually, if you are to be successful within a particular sector, you need to have had 20 years experience in that sector to understand how it works. But I'm always intrigued when people like yourself have moved sector, how they have found that, and whether or not they saw or found that the lack of knowledge of that particular sector was a hindrance, or in some cases a benefit.
So I've always found that I can do what I do in any sector. Going in somewhere completely new, obviously I've got a learning curve to get up, but with the help of the people around me, that can happen pretty quickly. And again, it's about the team, the leadership team, or the delivery teams that I slot into, mean that I don't think it is necessary to have the deep knowledge of that sector. Yes, of course it can help. But I remember when I went into Waitrose, one of the Waitrose board directors said to me, actually, Richard, we've got enough retail experts in Waitrose. What we need is someone who can help glue the whole thing together.
Yes, and having that outside view.
Yeah, and so I think, and certainly I looked for it in the teams that I build.
So if you have to boil down everything, all your experience, into one sort of core takeaway today, what would that be?
Transformation is about taking an organisation, to somewhere fundamentally different. Mm-hmm. It is critical, therefore, to find the best possible set of people that you can, that will work together and collectively lead that shift in the organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think transformation means different things to many different people, and we constantly hear about digital transformation this and digital transformation that. I agree. It always comes down to the people, and your ability to change the way things are done will ultimately be your ability to change the way people react or respond or do things differently. Well, thanks, Richard. Are you happy to take questions and respond to any clarification requested by listeners?
Absolutely. Yeah, very happy to.
I just find it's a great way to continue the discussion.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thanks a lot, and speak soon. I trust that you're finding these conversations interesting. Please do let me know if you'd like me to delve into any specific area of transformation in upcoming episodes. The next episode is with Damon Lawrenson, who has experience of delivering transformation across both public and private sectors, whilst under massive political scrutiny, and will undoubtedly share his perspective on well-being and mindfulness and the part it plays in his success. If you'd like to know more about Richard or any of the people that join us in the coming weeks, please do get in touch with me. You'll find my contact details in the show notes. Don't forget, if you haven't already, go subscribe to the podcast.